Hello, hello! The week of pour painting continues, and this time we're looking at a pretty simple comparison, not even an experiment so much. I have some Liquitex Iridescent Medium, which gives a nice metallic shine to the paintings. Really shimmery, that kind of oily multicolor glow, and we're going to see what that looks like in a red and a white compared to the same paint colors used, but instead for our red and white we're using mica powder. So this is just going to be to see different qualities for an iridescent, glimmery shine outside of a standard metallic paint that you might be able to pick up. Liquitex Iridescent Medium and the mica powders are nice. The mica powders you can get in a large variety of colors, so you can really play with what metallic looks you get. The Liquitex Iridescent Medium is really good because you can add this to any color and it works like a paint thinner like Floetrol or PVA, something like that. This extends the paint without reducing the ability to dry well, so you won't get that cracking and you can thin this out effectively. So this is just a one-step thinner. You just add a little paint to it, and that particular paint color that you add into this will be shinier or more iridescent depending on how much you've added. So I'm going to mix this in. I have these four paints. I have this white, red, and then the yellow and kind of crimson color. I have these four already pre-mixed with my usual recipe of Floetrol and water and paint. And I'm going to add the mica powder into the red and the white. Then for the red and the white, I'm just going to add Liquitex only, so these cups are currently empty. We'll toss a couple drops of silicone in real quick and then just do a standard little flip cup. Alright, let's see how that looks. Attention to a couple things between the Liquitex and our mica powder. First off, I ended up pouring a little bit more paint into the cup for the Liquitex pour, so that's why the cells have better consistency. They haven't been tilted as much as I had to tilt this painting to cover the canvas. But you will notice that these are continuing to feather. That really kind of transparent, veiny look as the colors are kind of mushing together, and that does appear to be due to the mica powder. Not any chemical consistency in the powder itself, but it's very hard to blend together the powder evenly throughout the paints. So there's been tiny little clusters that I just couldn't stir out using any kind of method that would leave the paint intact. I could have used a blender or some kind of whisk to really stir up the mica powder, but it would have made the paint foamy, and with the amount of bubbles that would have created, it would have been completely worthless. So instead, we have these little chunks, tiny little chunks, but still tiny little clusters of mica powder that ended up in the paint, and as the surface tension of the paint being spread kind of pulled the clusters apart, and that's where we have these little veiny explosions. It's an interesting look. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but if you're wondering right off the bat why there's such a distinct difference in how this turned out, one, we had less paint, so it had to stretch a little bit further just to cover the whole canvas, and two, those little clusters of mica powder popped out and ended up around the edges. So everything is, it's kind of every cloud has a silver lining right now. Alright, let's take a look. I have a little cheapy macro lens I got off of Amazon, so hopefully that'll let you see close enough to get some of the detail on this. I'm also trying to show the whole canvas at once. We can get in a little closer in a second. So just as a first glance, this is the canvas here, and if you look, it's this corner here, whoop, this guy. If you check that out, you can see there's a little shine to it. Same with the white in the middle with these little leaves, the way it's blossom out there. There's a little shine. I wouldn't really call this iridescent or shimmery or anything like that, but it did dry more securely where it didn't bleed too much. It did bleed a bit here, but the rest of it for the most part stayed intact and didn't run too much. So the Liquitex does have that advantage over the mica powder, which you can see here is just an outright mess. This looks pretty muddy. There's not much to say for it, and there's all these little tiny warts all over the top. And this is from those little clumps of mica powder. It looks like some of it, the surface tension of the paint, or some other principle of fluid physics must have contributed to the mica powder continuing to clump up in the paint, even beyond the little bits that spread out through the initial pour. So I would certainly advise against pouring with mica powder. You can see in general this didn't turn out well and has given us a result unlike any of the techniques we're familiar with for our poured paintings. So this one, I may not even be able to reuse the panel because of all the little lumps. We'll see if I can scrape those off or not. In the meantime, just kind of scooting this around. This is the iridescent layer, the iridescent features of our painting up close. All in all, I'd say if you want something shiny, just stick with a metallic paint. Your palette might be a little more limited than adding an iridescent medium, but for the cost and quite frankly for the results, I can't really justify spending this much on a pouring medium when the results come out like this. So, hope you found that informative. If you have better luck with your pouring medium, if you do some iridescence, show it off. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more of our week of pour painting. Thank you so much for watching. This is Souffle Art.